Welcome back to Budget 2024 coverage from the Office of the Leader of the Opposition. I'm Mervyn Williams. With me is Elson Lowe, and we have the Leader of the Parliamentary Opposition, Honorable Aubrey Compton Norton, MP. Mr. Norton, thank you for joining us. We had predicted that this budget would be heavy on infrastructure projects. We anticipate that the reason for that would be that the infrastructure projects are in fact a vehicle for corruption, and there's no emphasis on people development. There's a $3,000 increase for pensioners, for example. What do you make of Budget 2024, sir?
The first thing I would say with Budget 2024, that its name is a misnomer. Stay the course, building prosperity for all. Now, if you look at the budget, you will see that it isn't building prosperity for all. What it is doing is, again, putting wealth in the hands of those who have. When you look at the measures, $3,000 increase on pension, I think 3,500 social assistance.
3,000.
3,500 social, no, 3,500.
3,000.
All right, whatever. Social assistance. You are not seeing that resources are going to the people of Guyana. In this budget, a cursory look will show that under 10% is being spent on the people and the people benefiting. Therefore, to talk anything about building prosperity for all is out. This budget is putting wealth in the hands of the PPP elite, family, friends, and favorite. When we look at education, one would have thought that more resources would have gone towards things like transportation for school children, etc. Again, they are talking about building schools, so many primary schools, so many secondary schools, but you are not paying the teachers to teach in that school. And so you're not going to improve the quality of education. What is going to happen is billions will be had by certain PPP contractors. They will get rich and our people will continue to suffer. The minister with responsibility for finance had the audacity to say that late in the year, you will announce increases in wages and salaries for public servants. When you know full well that the wages and salaries that exist now are inadequate, you just give 6.5%, which made no sense. Because in essence, people's lives have not improved. And so one would have thought that if he wanted to stick to the theme of building prosperity for all, then there would have been wage increases for the average man out there so that they have more disposable income. He keeps talking about increased disposable income from the school grant of 45,000. Now, if you pay the parents of those children proper wages and salary, you don't even have the need to do that. And if you invest in transportation for those children, then again, it will be direct benefit to the children. But the government is so bent on creating this gravy train so that they can have a nice life. What they are doing is putting a lot of focus on infrastructure when not delivering proper services. In the case of the police, he spent a lot of time talking about building police stations, giving the police vehicle. I agree the police need vehicles, etc. But what is needed is a reduction in crime. And that would have demanded that you put money in education, in the training of investigators. So you improve the investigative capacity of the Ghana police force, but you haven't done that. You just said, I'm going to train this among the prosecutors, but none for the investigative arm of the Ghana police force. So what is evident is that even in the public security sector, the focus is not on dealing with the most critical thing for the people of Guyana, reduction in crime. And to the extent that they are not improving the investigative capacity, they seem to be facilitators of crime, because we have the money now that we could train people in the best institutions in the world to deal with crime. Now, you're talking about increased tourism. Last year, you budgeted for a hospitality center. You haven't spent 1 cent of that money. Finally, the president said last week that construction will begin. But last year, you budgeted money for it. You did nothing, and you're saying you're serious about the tourism sector. How could you be serious when you budgeted billions for the sector, but you failed to build the basic center, while you're building other things that are irrelevant? And then when you look at the infrastructure plan, apart from the incompetence, when we say to people that this government discriminates against Linden and Region 10, they're annoyed. But this budget shows the level of discrimination. You are building 4-lane highways on the East Bank. You are building 4-way highway where you're compelled to build the 4-lane one, Baburu Road. You will now come into Linden, and then when you meet the Suzdike Linden Highway, you will have a 2-lane highway. It defies common sense. If this government, in the presentation, the minister said they're trying to improve traffic safety, why would you put back a 2-lane highway where you will have traffic going in 2 different directions on the same lane, on the same highway? If you do, what they should have done is to do a parallel 2-lane highway. And while they build that, just maintain this present highway. When they complete that, they move over to the 2-lane and then complete that. And at the end of that, you would have had a 4-lane highway, which will contribute to a reduction in accidents, because you haven't got people overtaking in opposite directions on the same road. So their interest is not in security. Their interest is not in improving the lives and quality of life of people. Here again, it is blatant discrimination. I would like to see who will explain to the people of Linden that you're doing 4-lane highways all around, but when you meet the Suzdike Linden Highway, you're rehabilitating the 2-way one and leave it like that. So they can come off of Linden into 4-way, and then when you come off of the 4-lane, going to Linden, you're back on the 2-way. It makes no sense. It's just a manifestation of the discrimination that they are involved in. So this budget will not put resources in the hands of the people. Nothing in it will help to eradicate poverty. What they have done is to give a little freck here and a freck there, calling it grants, rather than effective programs that will improve the lives of the people. Now you carry up the threshold to 100,000. We were saying, take it to 150,000. More people would have benefited, and you would have been in a better position. When you take it to 100,000, not many people will benefit, because a lot of people over there, over the 100, but only those people 100,000 and below will benefit. You could have carried it up to the point where more Guyanese, including middle income, can benefit. So even in terms of disposable income, they have been doing a bad job. Well, this presentation on the arts, culture, and sport was a joke. You have a country in which most of the community grounds have been disturbed by the incompetence of the Ministry of Youth, Sport, and Culture. And you come talking about investment in sport. And you're saying of 217 billion for the culture and the arts, you give to the youth 1.1 billion. How could you, knowing that the youth is the largest cohort in this country, and you allocate, according to the minister, 1.1 billion to deal with youth problems? Again, you cannot be serious. And there are many problems that the youth or that youths are facing that they are not coming to grips with. We have a lot of young people coming out of school, dropping out of school. They are not matriculating. They are not getting 5 subjects CXC with math and English. I would have thought that recognizing that there are so many people out there, the government would have come up with some night school program. They scrapped the one the AP and UAFC had, but there is need for a proper structured night school so that a lot of the children who drop out from school can go back to school and get some certification. You're talking about training, building buildings, but what are you doing in terms of investing in the training of teachers? And as teachers leave, you believe that training 200 or 300 will solve the problem? Teaching is a profession. Teaching comes with experience. Every time you train a couple people and just lose them in a classroom, you are not doing the school system any good. You need to retain the quality teachers you have, and as you train, have them mentor the younger ones so that we produce teachers of consequence. The same nonsense they say they're doing in health. They're putting them to centers to train nurses. If you don't give them a proper salary, the minute they get little experience, they're gone. So the government is not tackling problems at the root. They have created a gravy train so that they could continue the corruption and so that them, their families, friends, and favorite could make money at the expense of the people of Guyana. When I listen to him on the NIS and the measures, clearly there is no comprehensive approach to dealing with, and that's the big problem with this budget. It's a hodgepodge of projects that aren't integrated and are not part of a proper plan.
Quick question before Elson comes in with his. The Gold Scholarship Program has benefited from a vote of $4 billion, while the University of Guyana has benefited from a similar vote. You have been speaking about free education at the University of Guyana being not only possible, but possibly immediately. If this $4 billion that has gone to Gold would have been appropriated to the University of Guyana Fund, would that not have made free education at UG immediately quite a real possibility?
Yes, but the first thing you must say is that the Constitution dictates that there be free education at the university level. Now, clearly, goal is an attempt to put resources in institutions that they have links with. Because while you're talking about building a world-class university, everything for him is world-class. You building a world-class university, and the online training you're paying for costs more than the in-situ training at the University of Ghana. It makes no sense except it is corruption. Now, we should have been putting more resources into the University of Ghana so that it not only train people, and when you talk about goal is restricted to training people. The University of Ghana can develop think tanks. They can do research. They have far more capacity to develop the human resource in Guyana than the Gold Scholarship Program. And when you get to the bottom of the Gold Scholarship Programs, you will see links to people who, and then here in Guyana, local institutions are crying out that they are not, though they can give scholarships, they are not included in the Gold Program, so they are not benefiting. What you are seeing here is a classic case of poor allocation of resources. We are glad that after years, they kind of accept half-heartedly our proposal to cancel student loans. Of course, no proper approach is outlined, and you don't know where it is heading. But we have always been saying that we should get rid of those student loans and allow the students the freedom of working and developing themselves rather than being burdened with a student loan. And then again, when you look at the budget, what the minister isn't saying, he is talking about 9 and 10% increase in the non-oil sector. But most of the developments in the non-oil sector is fueled by the oil sector. And therefore, if the oil sector is in trouble, that would be in trouble. The problem is, though they are talking agro-processing and manufacturing, there is no proper program, no proper policy, and no plethora of projects to ensure that you diversify and develop the non-oil sector. So in large measure, again, this is just talk. Asni Singh was just involved in 5 hours plus of platitudes and an absence of plans, programs, and projects that can develop our people.
On that note, we before this national budget, we mentioned that the tax threshold should be increased to $150,000. We've seen again a minimal increase in that tax threshold, despite the budget increasing by in excess of 40%, it seems. And we've seen that the cost of living mitigation measures have been again increased minimally to $7 billion. But I'm seeing here actually that they say that the measures are to be determined after consultations, which sounds like they don't know what measures they want to do.
Well, I think they just dropped that in there because we were criticizing them. And they know that we can ask them when they're dealing with the estimates, how you put this together. So what they did is drop it in there to be able to say they're doing it. But if you are going to reduce poverty, you need structure, you need first of all to identify the communities with poverty and grade them, because there are different levels of poverty. You have to identify what is it needs to be done in those communities to deal with poverty. Just across the board saying we can train for TVET, we can train for this, doesn't make sense. The people at Sanfort in Berbice need special treatment. The people right over the river that's what Plastic City, they also need special intervention. Linden, there are areas that need special intervention, but you have a blanket thing which says we will do X, Y, and Z, but it does not give the specifics on how you will deal with the question of poverty. And then we come to cost of living. The budget was a contradiction. He went around the world to tell you how much inflation is in the world, and then come to tell us our inflation is less. So the argument that the outer world is impacting our inflation really has been killed by he himself. So now he has to explain why the high cost of living, since by his own approach, it is not externally driven. But there is really no link or no major link between inflation in Guyana and the cost of living. Cost of living is spiraling because of the incompetence of the government. And here we're talking about basic cash crop. There was no need for celery that was $200 to be $1,000, except that you didn't plan, you didn't increase the production, you continue to want to limit agricultural production to PPP strongholds, and you are not doing significant work to increase agriculture in Region 1, certain parts of Region 4, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Unless we work towards making all 10 regions sustainable in agriculture, we will have the increase in the price of foods, and it's going to be worse in the interior because you have to carry it in. So again, clearly, there is no program to reduce the cost of living. And while they're talking about increasing chicken production, they need to explain why then they're smuggling chicken. widen many of the places in this country, bring in the chicken in, take it out of the imported bag from Suriname, of wherever it comes from, and put it in a clear plastic bag like if it is chicken from here. That is also reducing the standard and quality. So you're dealing with a government that has not shown the capacity to plan. And I bet you, before 6 months, they come in with
Another supplemental.
supplementals to get more money, which is a characteristic of the government. They claim to be good managers, good planners, but every year they have to come with supplementary budgets to get money for things that they should have known. And so it's a clear incompetence.
Are you, Mr. Norton, prepared to approach the government on establishment of a bipartisan task force to address the issue of poverty and the high cost of living in Guyana?
I am prepared to. The problem will be their willingness to. Because you see, they are a government for the rich. The minute you start to talk cost of living, you are seeking to deal with the average man. This government doesn't have an interest in the average man. The interest is in the elite, the wealthy. Of course, there's a role for the wealthy in the society, but it is not the government's responsibility to keep poor people poor while you make the rich richer. And that is my problem.
Anything further from you, Elson?
Yes, just one additional note. I saw that they mentioned they were building 706 low-income homes, which to me seemed to be an embarrassing number even to mention. We've spoken about a rent-to-own scheme, and we believe strongly that we should invest in housing. I don't know if you want to speak to the fact that the government seems to, again, not understand how vital it is to have a more substantial housing program.
The government's intention really, again, is to make money. They announced some figures in Linden. I'm going to Linden myself. I don't remember the exact figure, but I am dead sure, absolutely sure, that in the last 2 years, 200 houses haven't been added to Linden. But they give, I think, 270 or something like that. Now, when you listen to them and figures, you know they pluck them from the skies. 30,000 households, they said, would have gotten land, etc. Okay, roughly 4 persons per household. It means 120,000 people be taken care of. But they are not telling us what is the backlog. Because if they tell us what is the backlog, we will know if they give 30,000 persons. My information is that the backlog is still large. And they have not delivered 30,000 house lots across this country. Roughly, if you're saying you deliver 30,000, you're talking about 3,000 per region. Some regions will be more, some will be less. Now, I am dead sure Region 10 hasn't been given 3,000 house lots. I am dead sure that in Region 4, there hasn't been. I don't think they had it in Region 5. So you see people just plucking figures. It reminds me of when Irfan Ali, while I was Shadow Minister Housing, and he was Housing Minister, telling the Parliament, we get distributed in Linden 20,000 house lots. I said to him, the average household is 4. If you distributed 20,000 house lot, you should really be able to get homes for 80,000 people. Linden doesn't have 80,000 people. And they still have a list. So you see, they just pull the figures from the sky. 720 is inadequate. But even that, I don't think they have delivered. And I want to make another point. The budget continues to be produced without proper description of projects. Office of the President in last year's budget got for half of the office, but not every area, $550 million for equipment and furniture. And if you go through the budget, which I do, you will see one of the areas of the slush fund is furniture and equipment. In every area, furniture and equipment. But there's nothing that says it is furniture for this school. Office of the President, big number furniture and equipment. What equipment? What furniture? Where are the equipment found? Where are the furniture to be found? They are not doing proper project description. So they are making it difficult for accountability because they can spend the money and you do not know where the money would have gone. They will have to tell us what they did with the billions they put in the budget for the hospitality center, which was to be built last year, but wasn't built. So in addition to the incompetence, etc., it is clear that they are inflating figures and pulling figures from the skies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Norton, for those words of assessment of the budget. They're only initial. I'm sure we will flesh it out more as we go along. I thank you for taking time out to join us. We'll take a short break, after which we will return with Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan, leader of the Alliance for Change. Welcome back as we continue our conversation on Budget 2024 from the Office of the Leader of the Opposition. I am Marvin Williams, together with Elson Lowe. We now have with us Leader of the Alliance for Change, Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan. Mr. Ramjatan, you lead a political party, you shadow the public security or home affairs, and prior to that you shadowed the Ministry of Agriculture. Give us your initial reaction on Budget 2024, which seems heavy on infrastructure and heavy on punishment of the poor.
Look, I came here with great expectations, but I must tell you that all were dashed, quite frankly. Look, I made some notes, and I think I'll have to take glimpses of the notes. We in this country are probably the 10th richest per capita in the world. And we are dealing with $1,146 million budget. Billion. And to the extent then that one would have expected that better is going to come for especially the working poor, we did not see that. And that is what really crushed what I thought that the government was going to do. Look, there must be a balance between infrastructural development and socioeconomic rising for the working poor. That didn't happen here. Not only the working poor, but also the pensioners, the other people that require social assistance, and so many other things, students, and a whole host of others. We ought to have spent less, in view of the fact that it is a 1.164 trillion budget. We ought to have rebalanced it as against what happened last year and the previous year. That did not happen. And so you're not going to get shared prosperity as a result. As a matter of fact, I believe when you concentrate the wealth to a crony capitalist contractor class, with all these projects, you are going to have a concentration of poverty. And that is going to be tantamount to lots more people leaving the country. We go to the passport office, we go to the American embassy every morning, and Lord have mercy, literally. Everybody wants to go away from a country that is literally the 10th richest in the world. So this budget really stands a distance from what I expected, and not for shared prosperity at all. It will be one that I quite frankly must say has lavished once again government benefits to already affluent families in this contract capitalist class and what they are now calling entrepreneurs. Yeah, it's a trickery. It is a big, big trickery. And we must not, with that kind of oil monies, create a state that heavily favors this upper class, especially friends, family, even flatterers and favorites. But look, the PPP and its leaders, almost with utter shamelessness and audacity, are telling us that, you know what? COVID caused this thing. The war inside of Ukraine causing this thing. Stories about people's dependency on government aid, you know, exogenous factors from overseas. And they're falsely claiming that the cost to enhance the working poor will be too much. We didn't even hear anything about what will be happening to public servants. We understand that there is a big chunk of money there for public servants, but we don't know whether it will be at 6.5 again or not. And I rather suspect this thing is not going to be much more this year. And what is ugly about the situation is that they will wait until 2024 to almost right up to November, December month, and then they give the people an increase. The working poor that is almost 50% of Guyana requires that money from the end of January. And so we're not going to get it. Right? And you know, this is against what I know the PDP had stood for when its founder leaders talked about the concentration of affluence creates affluence and the concentration of poverty will create poverty. Those are Chen Dragon's words. Or words tantamount to that. But here you have it. Infrastructural works. And where will that money go? It will be for some big prime contractors and all that. Look, I am depressed by the fact that pensioners will only get $2,000 a month. What could that be? Two sides of banking? It is heartbreaking that the PDP is on here. And I'm absolutely certain that the PDP support base are going to give them hell. Because we were going on, and they were saying that the budget is going to be back for us. Well, they are very now, and I'm absolutely certain that they will have absolutely nothing good to say because it was not redirected to them. They're going to talk a lot about drainage and irrigation. We need drainage and irrigation, yeah. But there again, how many people are going to benefit? The big rice farmers are going to benefit. You expect nothing for the small farmers and all of that. So those are my first impressions of the budget. I have to study it lots more, but you know, your first impression will last. And that is about it in relation to my statement at this stage.
Thank you very much. Lots for our viewers to ponder there. The one thing I'd like you to comment on as well is we've seen the government commit to, the president say to the UN that there'll be 20% of the national budget spent on education. And again, we've seen almost half of that percentage spent on education. And I think a lot of people were looking to see the University of Guyana be made free in this budget and are now disappointed by that. What do you make of the government's attitude to the university and to education more broadly, especially since Guyana has begun to include all revenues in budgets? The share of the budget spent on education has continually declined.
Look, there's a method to that madness, Elson. They want people to be stupid in this country. And when you go to university and you're bright enough, they know that they are migrating out. So the more kind of illiterate or uneducated we are, the better for them, because they then will go to them, give some handouts, and buy the votes. It is essentially that. The more educated your population is, the more you're going to have people making demands and arguing the case that you are not delivering for us. But when you have that kind of monies being spent half only on education as promised, well, where are we? And so it is my view, and I have always said to this, that they want people not to be very much educated. And so that, it is a damaging thing. Not delivering for education, health, and the other important one, education and health, very important. You really put more pain, more trauma on 50% of the Guyanese people. And that is damaging and destructive to especially our people who now will not see a future and they'll just want to go away. That is going to create even more brain drain.
You have, Mr. Ramjatan, referred to Gaisuko as a black hole in an economic sense. Again, in 2024, we see Gaisuko taking a hefty chunk of the national pie. $6 billion have been allocated to Gaisuko. Gaisuko is clearly not capable of standing on its own feet economically. It's not viable. It can't make the grade, as we say. The University of Guyana received a vote of $4 billion, and Gaisuko, a larger chunk. What do you make of the vote to Gaisuko in the context of its viability vis-a-vis education at the level of the University of Guyana, when we need to equip our young brigade, the young workforce, I beg your pardon, for the new and dynamic oil and gas sector?
It reveals that the government hasn't its priority right. Look, we need more people in service sector, and that would require educated people. And the same sugar workers and their children could benefit from university education that can take them out from that fetching cane to the punt mentality that the PPP wants. But the PPP wants its support base to be like that, because then they could go and fool them, talk bad things about the coalition, and get them to vote for them. So there is, in my view, not getting its priority right. Plus, they want to discriminate. A lot of the students that go to University of Guyana, as against who now are working with Gaisuko, you know the demographics of that. So there is a method to their madness. Don't ever feel that the PPP leaders and its Minister of Finance and so on are not smart enough to understand who and where they must give this money to. And to that extent, this black hole will continue. Sugar and Gaisuko are supposed to bring in revenue. We are now taking revenues out of the treasury to ensure that things operate. And it is not going to get better. Even recently, they came out and indicated that they're not getting the workers, the labor is short. Who will want to go and work at Gaisuko? Come on. But they put in another $6 billion, $7 billion, and they leave for the University of Guyana. And so I think their priorities are misplaced, and they're rebalancing for socioeconomic purposes for the working poor, as against infrastructure, is totally in a mess. They really have gotten it wrong. But of course, they will come here in the debate and indicate a lot of tangential issues about 2020 elections, this, that, whatever. But let me tell you, Sue, even in public security, you're going to go now to public security. We will build plenty police station and do all that we're talking about. But the people that are going to man these police stations require a better salary. How are they going to do the job of proper investigations and interrogations and the variety of forensics that we see that the government would wish of them if they do not spend what is called a better on bettering the income of the ordinary policeman? Police now literally are impoverished as a result, and in the context of a budget that is as large as 1 billion and more, 1 trillion and more.
In the public security system, outside of the income for the employees in that sector, there seemed to be an emphasis now on surveillance, and surveillance not only for crime, but surveillance of people who are not necessarily supporters of the government. But in this budget, does this budget give you a sense that it provides for the equipping of the Guyana police force, their lab, their training, their preparation for real crime detection and crime prevention? Do you get a sense that this is coming out of here?
Well, we had heard about them talking about facial recognition and what is called a development from what the coalition government had, which is Safe City, because we had to start someplace, and we used the monies from China that had granted us the smart city projects all across Georgetown to expand it now to what they call smart country. I don't know how much monies will be going into that or where the monies will be coming from. Well, whatever it is important to understand that their smart countries program will obviously mean something to better the crime solving. But we also know how the PPP operates. They don't like dissenting voices. They don't like opposition voices. And so, as an editorial of Stabrook News recently indicated, it could be misused. But I want to believe that we have to put a lot of check and balance on the usage of that facial recognition cameras. I understand that they bought it from Israel, a country that is now demolishing the Gazans, the spyware Pegasus equipment. I don't know how much they paid for it or whatever it is. Everything was secret here. So we'll have to get to the bottom of it and be assured that indeed there will be a direction towards greater crime solving as a result of these cameras and the central headquarters station somewhere with that 12-story building that they're building for $6 billion. For $6 billion. Again, infrastructure. But of course, the fire having burnt the Brickdam police station down, I think we ought to invest in there.
Just one more note, we've seen the government again give a very meager allocation for direct costs and living mitigation, and in fact say that they'll only announce measures after consultation, which sounds really like they don't know what they want to do. We've also seen this year the budget expand by in excess of 40%, and oil revenues, $240 billion worth of oil revenues available. Do you get the sense that the government still doesn't take the cost of living crisis seriously? And how do you feel about that?
Oh, they're lying about that. That is an absolute lie. Inflation at 2%. Could you believe that? 2 years ago, you could get a slice of the pumpkin that we were talking about for $100. You're getting it for $1,000 now. Every single thing, chicken, beef, pork, every item on the shelves of supermarkets have gone up. And they come up with this fancy full figure of 2% inflation. It is utterly outrageous. And so the cost of living relief is not going to do anything here. And it is only, as I said, is going to impoverish the working poor further. And that could be with the consequence of tremendous resentment from a population that feels that their country deserves to give them more and they are not getting it. And so we can have resentments going to people now wanting to strike, people wanting to do the things that will expressly state to the government, you're not serving us at all.
Absolutely. You had mentioned earlier that Guyana is the 10th richest country per capita. When you adjust for prices, it is the 10th richest country per capita in the entire world this year.
Yes.
So your remarks, I think, are very much spot on. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll connect with you later on in the week.
Take care, Elson, and Movin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramjatan. Well, Elson, we've had quite a bit coming from the leader of the opposition and the leader of the Alliance for Change. I believe that our audience will have a lot to digest. And as we go forward discussing this budget, in the run-up to the debate, in the run-up of the consideration of the estimates, I believe that Guyanese people will come to a full understanding of what a distraction this budget really is, that it has nothing for the working poor, that it has everything for, as Mr. Ramjatan said, that he used 3 C's, I believe. I remember it, but it's very, very revealing, these last 2 conversations we've had.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what we'd like to leave viewers with is when you see a $3,000 increase in your pension, you think to yourself, you could have given $3,000 increase in pension without oil. Therefore, it means that the government has no interest in something as important as the welfare of our pensions, even while we're seeing a national budget which is already, just on first glance, larger than the spending of 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014's budgets all combined. Folks, if there isn't a clear indication that the government doesn't have any interest in the average Guyanese, then that, I don't know what it is.
Well, it was Mr. Bharat Jagdeo who boldly declared, echoed by Mr. Ali, who he supervises, that the pensioners will see a 50% increase in their pension. There seemed to have been a departure from that. And there's been a shift now to say that by the end of their 5 years, that will be realized. What do you make of these commitments, retractions, and misrepresentations by the People's Progressive Party when it comes to poor people in this country?
I think it's pretty clear what the PPP's priorities are. If you can't give pensioners a substantial increase with a budget that is in excess of $1 trillion Guyana, and in a country that, adjusting for prices, is the 10th richest per capita, 10th highest income per capita in the entire world, then it just shows that you never really intended to give pensioners a substantial increase at all. If you can't make the University of Guyana free, that's another example. When your budget is in excess of $1 trillion, it just indicates that you never intended, you don't want to make the University of Guyana free at all. If you're only going to give $7 billion for the direct cost of living mitigation during such a severe cost of living crisis of a budget in excess of $1 trillion, again, that indicates that you just are not interested in the cost of living crisis.
And that's a good place to leave this conversation this evening. I'd like to thank you very much, Ed, for sharing these hours. I think it would have been tremendously boring had you not. So thank you very much for sharing these hours with me. And to our viewers, I thank you for sitting up with us and following this conversation. We hope that we've been able to clarify issues for you and to keep you informed on what's happening in Budget 2024. We will continue this conversation on another day. Thank you very much. Until we meet again, God bless.